welcome to Archery Geek Outdoors. Good evening, one and all. Welcome to the Archery Geek Outdoors podcast, and we're on episode 64. I was going to make this a non-video podcast because I'm still finding it really uncomfortable being in front of the camera to do these. Biggest thing is lack of teeth. I'm really conscious about the lack of teeth I've got and how it looks on camera. Hence, me sitting this close to the mic, and you can tell I'm not used to sitting this close to it. I'm bouncing my mouth off it at the moment, but trying to use it to hide the fucking gaps in my mouth. I'm like the original limey redneck here. So apologies if it looks like I'm noshing off the big red end of the mic, but it is how it is. Anyway, first things first, got to say a massive congratulations to Stephanie Conti. Stephanie was one half of the Off-Centre Archers podcast before her business took off to such an extent that she hadn't got time to host it with Anthony. Anthony, of course, hosts it with Dougie now, but they've both been so busy that we haven't seen an episode from them in ages. And I really hope they start recording again. Anyway, the congratulations to Stephanie is for completing her first marathon. What an absolute mammoth achievement that is. And she'd been doing regular 5k runs, and then I think she'd done a 13.5 she mentioned on the podcast. 13 half, something like that. She just kept running while she was out on a 5k and just kept going. She's now completed her first marathon and in training for a second, so massive congratulations to you, Stephanie. All the best for the second one. Right, what else is there? I've call to action, guys. I don't ask a lot of those that listen and watch to this. I hope the dogs have started again already. Fortunately, I can't hear them coming through my headphones, so I don't think the mic is picking them up. Call to action. I'm 11 downloads off 10,000. We were close on episode 63. We are really close now. We're just a gnat dick away. So I'm going to ask you to like and share the links, folks. Shout it out to your friends. If you haven't subscribed to the Archery Geek Outdoors YouTube channel, go and give that a subscribe. I have got the most minimal number of subscribers. I'm not even at 50 yet. Hit YouTube, hit at Archery Geek Outdoors and give it a subscribe. And don't forget to hit that little bell notification down below to let you know when videos come out. I keep saying I am going to try and do more videos. There's a couple of things I want to do videos on, and I can't do them every week. I'm not creative enough to roll them out every week. You know, I can't imagine them being mega high quality videos, but it's just something to get the podcast name out there a little bit. So go and do that for me, folks. Bear with me a second. I've got a cough. I'm sounding a little hoarse, so I'm just going to drop the volume on this channel. Whoops, I managed to hit the mute button on it as well. So there we go. I'm back again. How embarrassing is that when you hit the mute button on the channel? I've only got 2 channels going on here at the moment. That's the intro music, which was the Facade remix of Flaming June. As we come into summer, I thought I'd resurrect that one again. Yeah. Friend of mine, Adam Thomas, did that remix. Absolutely amazing producer, and he's heading out moving to Australia with his infinitely better half, Laura, later this year. Wishing you both the best of luck. Right, before we start on the main body of the podcast, I just want to touch briefly on the very sad news that Athens Archery have had to close down. This has all come about after a dispute with Bowtech. Those that like your compound bows and keep up with what's launched, you'll know from the YouTube reviews, Athens launched a no press required tuning system that was not dissimilar to Bowtech's. Anyway, when it was announced, this system had been patented by Athens Archery. Now, I know my way fairly well around the law in the UK from university studies. Don't know the US law, but I'd have honestly thought if it was so close to Bowtech's that Bowtech could bring legal action, then they wouldn't have been able to get a patent on it. You know, I don't know US law, so I could be completely wrong. Hang on, let me just check, make sure these things are both recording. Yep, they're both recording. Thank goodness for that. Wouldn't be the first time I've forgotten to hit record on something after all, would it? But apparently Bowtech thought it was too close and infringed on their patents, so apparently they sent a cease and desist notice, to which Athens replied, then Bowtech threatened to sue them. Now, Bowtech is owned by a private equity group, I believe, or their parent group is owned by a private equity mob, and obviously they've got very, very deep pockets. Athens Archery is a small firm. They haven't got the kind of pockets to be able to defend an action of this kind. Even if they were going to win it, you've still got to pay everything to defend it. So unfortunately, they took the decision to close a firm, which is absolutely tragic. It's always awful to see a firm closed, but when it looks as though it's because of nothing more than corporate bullying, the optics for Bowtech at the moment are absolutely horrendous. They got an awful lot of flack for getting rid of Tim Gillingham and Carl Douglas from the pro staff, and now, like I say, it appears, and it is only appearing like it, that they've bullied another firm into closing. This really doesn't look good for them. It looks, you like to think of the archery industry, the archery community as a whole, as one that wants to see everybody improve. And when you've got this kind of thing going on, it looks bad on the industry. And like I say, but the optics for Bowtech are absolutely horrendous. It just looks as though it's money, money, money and nothing else. I mean, yes, I know as a business, their sole reason to exist is to make a profit. But can you really see a small mom and pop firm like Athens threatening Bowtech? It just looks like corporate greed and nothing else. Anyway, that's enough of my moan. Right, in episode 63, I mentioned that I was having a dabble with the carnivore diet. The reason I wanted to do this, as you know, when I started this journey, I just started eating clean, monitoring what I was eating, only eating whole foods, and had really good success. Before I started carnivore, I'd say the last 3 or 4 months, my eating habits had slipped. I'd got lazy with them. I was eating a lot of ultra-processed food, not what I set out to do, but it's easy to fall back onto 50 years of bad habits. Well, 53 years now, because between the last podcast and this, I've celebrated my 53rd birthday. What an old fart, eh? Anyway, eating habits, I'd slipped into bad old habits again, which wasn't good for me, and I could tell I wasn't feeling great. So I thought, shall I go just to what I was doing before? Because it worked. I thought, no, let's switch it up a bit, let's swap it around, let's try something different, try and keep it interesting. And I'd looked at all kinds of diets, from keto to paleo. I'd even looked at plant-based diets. And those that know me, I'm a confirmed meat lover. I'm not vegan friendly, but I looked at everything to see what would be the simplest to do. And having gone through, Carnivore seemed like although the most restrictive, the simplest to stick to. I don't know what to say to stick to, because I love my bread, I love my potatoes, I love pasta, I love shit like that. It seemed to be the simplest. It was obvious what you could and couldn't eat. And I first heard about the carnivore diet, it's got to be a couple of 3 years ago. I was listening to a podcast. I think it might have been one of Joe Rogan's. I can't swear to it, but I think it was one of Rogan's with Michaela Peterson on, Dr. Jordan Peterson's daughter. And she'd been suffering from all kinds of autoimmune disorders, really, really bad depression, and mental health had the shit knocked out of it. And she tried a very extreme form of the carnivore diet in the end, after slowly eliminating various things from her diet and seeing no improvement. She got down to just eating red meat and drinking water. And she had phenomenal results on this. The version Michaela does is very often referred to as a lion diet, and it involves eating ruminant meat only with a bit of salt and drinking water. And then it was definitely a Rogan podcast I was listening to, episode 2069 with Dr. Sean Baker. And right, I'm going to have to start referring to notes here. And this seems to disturb me more when I've got that thing in front of me than if I'm doing an audio-only podcast. Like I say, I'm still feeling fairly uncomfortable in front of the camera, and it's really weird just looking at this single lens. These iPhones, I've got a lens there, and a lens there, and I don't know what it's like if I look at that lens or that lens, whether it looks weird, but you have to keep trying to look at this lens here that I'm recording on. See, and I've got my computer off here, so I can't even see how the image looks. Anyway, I've got to refer to notes. Like I say, this kind of distracts me, having the camera there, and I hope me clonking my notebook around isn't picking up through the mic too bad, although I can't hear through the headphones, so I don't think it is. There we go. My big old notebook. Like I say, I was listening to this one with Dr. Sean Baker, who is 8 years carnivore. He's an orthopaedic surgeon and working in the health system in the US. He had picked up that there are some massive discrepancies in the way things work out there. We're very fortunate here in the UK. We have a national health service. Everybody pays national insurance, or everybody earning pays national insurance. And this goes towards the cost of running the NHS. Well, used to run very successfully until they got private bloody firms involved in it. Anyway, in the States, from what I understand that Dr. Baker said, their health service is run on a for-profit basis. I know things can be horrendously expensive out there if you haven't got health insurance, and health insurance companies, of course, want to take your money and dodge as many claims as they possibly can. But having this for-profit health industry creates... Oh, God, what's the word? Hang on, let me look at this. Creates massive flaws and conflicts of interest. One of the biggest ones that brought things to light was the whole oxycodone scandal in the States, where doctors were being paid to prescribe tablets by the drug companies. And listening to Sean Baker, what he said, this creates this horrible conflict of interest where it's in the doctor's benefit. It benefits the doctors if people are ill because they get to prescribe more drugs. They don't want people cured. They want to keep prescribing drugs to mask the symptoms, because if you then have people cured, they're not coming back. You're not getting to prescribe them more drugs, buy more drugs from the drug companies. So you're not getting all those kickbacks. And Dr. Sean Baker started looking at lifestyle choices. And hang on, let me just grab this again. I'm going to have to hold this up out here like this. I'm just looking at this computer screen, make sure it's not on the screen. Yeah, there we go. Dr. Baker was looking at root cause medicine. Let's tackle the root cause, because then if you tackle the root cause, people are healthier. They don't need to go into hospital as much. They don't need to go to the doctors as much. And this really pissed off the hospital he was working at. So they revoked his license to practice medicine. He appealed this, got his license back, and set up a company that looks at lifestyle medicine to stop you getting sick in the first place. Now, this is my second attempt at recording this today. First attempt, I thought it was really disjointed. I'd got no flow, and I'm still blaming that thing there, because concentrating on that, like I say, just seems to get in my head. It really does. Anyway, if I remember rightly, the company is Rivero, and when I listened to him on Joe Rogan, they were just about ready to launch in all 50 states. Now, there was like I say, that's what got me That's what got me. God, I'm nutting the microphone again. That's what got me really interested in the carnivore diet, was his experience of it, how well he felt, how good he looks, the results he'd had off it. Now, the first thing I've got to do, there is a really huge myth about the carnivore diet that I've got to debunk straight away. I've seen a lot of folks talking about carnivore diet, saying when you're on this, and the carnivore diet is an animal product based. You only eat animal products. It's low to zero carbs, high protein, high fat. And a lot of folks that talk about this say, oh, you can eat as much as you want when you're on the carnivore diet. Absolute bollocks. If you're eating it to lose weight, and this is what I want to do, I want to lose some weight, help me on this journey, which I'm going back on now. You still need to run a calorie deficit to lose weight. It's absolute bullshit that you can eat as much as you want and lose weight. Rubbish. If you are running a calorie surplus, you will put on weight. It's as simple as that. You cannot change. I was going to say the physics. Is it the physics? Is it the biology? The biology of it. If you run a calorie surplus, you're going to put on weight. Simple. No ifs, no buts. You can argue till you're blue in the face. You want to lose weight, you've got to run a calorie deficit. I found this makes it easier to run a calorie deficit. And I'll tell you why as I go through this. But God, I've lost the plot here. Yeah, when he was talking, one of the things he mentioned was the anti-inflammatory properties of this diet, and that's what really got me. I suffer with very mild arthritis in the knees from riding and crashing motorcycles, Well, no, not from riding motorcycles, purely from crashing motorcycles. I had two accidents where I landed on my left knee. That gave me mild arthritis in my left knee, and I could always tell if it was going to be cooler or damper because my left knee would start playing up, which meant I'd favour my right knee. I'd put all my weight down through my right leg, and of course that didn't do my right knee any good at all. So this is what really appealed to me. And I thought, right, I'll have a look at this. And animal products only. I tried to avoid any processed meats, but meat, particularly ruminants and camelids. The joy of ruminants and camelids is they have multi-chambered even stomachs. Right, hang on. Let me just get hold of this. Where the hell is it? I've got. Hang on. I think it's in the next set of notes. Right, I started this and then flip back to it. Right, ruminants includes cattle, sheep, goats, buffalo, and deer, which have 4 sectional stomachs. Camelids include llamas, alpacas, and camels. They have 3 sections to the stomachs. And when I looked at the carnivore, it flew against everything we've always been told about diet and nutrition. I mean, we've always been told you need your veggies, you need your fruit, you need this, you need that, you need the other. There is... I mean, I used to have porridge every morning to get a good dose of fibre in. There is now more and more evidence suggesting that you need fibre if you eat the typical shitty Western diet high in ultra-processed foods. If you don't eat the ultra-processed foods, you can get everything you want from animal products. And I was having meat, butter, eggs, dairy, including full-fat milk, full-fat cream cheese, hard cheeses, double cream. You know, there's some amazing recipes on the carnivore diet. There's a load I still want to try out. So after a month on the carnivore and then coming off it, I've come off it as an experiment to see if I can notice a difference, because I'll go through the differences I noticed when I was eating carnivore. Where was I? See, I'm doing it again, off at a tangent, not looking at me notes because I'm concentrating on that bloody little eye looking at me there. I'm going to reverse back to my notes. Like I say, I did this earlier, thought it sounded like an absolute bloody train wreck. And when I watched it back, it didn't. I was thinking I wish I'd have just kept going on it. Right, let me get back to the original notes I took on this. Yeah, I say Sean Baker referred to a study at Harvard by a senior author named David Ludwig, and Dr. Baker said that Ludwig was into pure science. He wouldn't take funding from industry for his science, for his research. And I mean, we all know how easy it is to corrupt research when there's money involved. Bear with me a moment, I'm getting a little dry again. Let me just, instead of fading it down, I'm just going to mute it while I cough. And I'm back again, and I think it's time for a sip of my coffee. Coffee brought to you by Liberty Archers. My favourite mug. I'm sure I said before that they were selling these at the 2-day shoot last year at Liberty Archers, £8 a mug, and I was going to buy one on the Sunday, and on the Saturday night I won one in the raffle. No, on the Sunday night, sorry, I won one in the raffle before I was going to buy one, so happy days, and thank you, Liberty. Oh, that's much better. Right, back to where I was. I wonder if I'd do that. Do I look as though I'm not looking too far from the camera while I'm reading notes? How easy it is to influence studies with money. I mean, the most famous one was the study that was paid for by the sugar industry that told us sugar was good for us and fat was really bad for us. And for so many years, that study was the basis of so much dietary and nutritional advice. We now know that's absolute bollocks. Cross sugar, it's been called the Great White Killer. You know, you'd think the Great White Killer would be cocaine, but no, it's refined sugar. It's more addictive and more deadly than cocaine is. Anyway, I want to hold this up here, see if I can do it without my arm going to sleep, without looking as though I'm looking too far away. Anyway, this study that was lead authored by David Ludwig studied 2,000 people on the carnivore diet. Out of those 2,000, 225 were diabetics. And after following the carnivore diet, 92% of those 225 type 2 diabetics came off all insulin and 84% came off metformin. You know, they really are remarkable results. But the downside was they were self-reported. You know, I've just forgotten the bloody word now. I was rattling it off earlier. Epidemiological studies, that's it. Now, in 2021, Michaela Peterson quoted this study in an address at the Oxford Union talking about the carnivore diet. In response to this, on March 31st, 2023, an article was published on a website called healthfeedback.org. It was edited by Ruben Porte Cavaliera, and he highlighted the shortcomings of a self-perceived benefit survey, including recall bias, selection bias, which kind of put a bit of a downer on David Ludwig's study. So I decided to go off down the rabbit hole, as is my wont, to find out what I could about the carnivore diet. I went to that study of David Ludwig's, and that referenced several other studies. I looked at those which each referenced additional studies, and there's this whole chain of studies that majority are epidemiological. Is that the word I'm looking for? I think it is. If it's not, somebody will correct me. If you want to know the email address, have a look at the bottom left of the screen. If you're watching this on YouTube, I've put a new card up, and part of that is with camo, as well as your email address and a social handle. It also, it requires you to put your pronouns on there. I don't believe in those, so I've just put sweary/Archer, because we all know how I love to fucking swear, don't we? Anyway, if you want the email address, just look at the bottom left of the screen on YouTube. If you listen to it on audio, it's archerygeekoutdoors@gmail.com. But big hint, go and have a look at YouTube. I've lost where I was now. Yeah, there are all these studies, and I spent so long going through these. Because I wanted to try it, I was trying not to let confirmation bias creep into this. And going through YouTube looking for flaws with the carnivore diet, and of course the only ones that tend to come up are the ones from the plant-based diet brigade. And one of the things that I discovered listening to Rogan's podcast, there's more and more evidence now suggesting plants can communicate with each other. And when certain plants are harvested, they release something very similar to a pheromone, which is then detected by other plants. And these plants then start producing toxins even, to make them less edible to whatever's trying to eat them. And, that's a little bit scary, that is. The plants are trying to kill you, folks. You don't hear the vegans telling you that, do you? Never mind. Anyway, where was I? It was very difficult to find anything apart from those really, really pro-plant-based diet and the anti-cruelty brigade. It was hard to find anything negative. There's still the perceived link between cholesterol and heart disease, but there was a study completed at the end of December 2023. I'm still trying to dig the results out. I'm going to have to go back to that Rogan podcast, have a listen and find the name of it again and dig out the results. Looking a totally fresh, supposedly unbiased look at the link between cholesterol levels and heart disease. Now, when Sean Baker was talking about it, he was of the opinion that it was going to end up saying that if you're healthy, if you're not overweight, you've got a good level of cardio fitness, a reasonable level of muscle mass, you haven't got anything else majorly wrong with you, the link between cholesterol and heart disease is going to be minimal. It's going to be more concerning if you are unhealthy, if you're overweight, you're obese, you've got poor cardio fitness, you've got other things wrong with you. But I'll dig that out. I have to have a deep dive and find that and spend God knows how many hours reading through that. But you know me, I like to be able to look from both sides, and I do like to deep dive on things so I can get as much information as possible. I mean, one of the other things you mentioned was the involvement of massive private equity firms. Now, is it Blackstone or BlackRock? I can't remember. BlackRock or Blackstone, one of the biggest private equity firms in the world, have huge investments in firms producing ultra-processed food and in the pharmaceutical companies. Now, for them, that makes perfect sense. And I'd mentioned, in one of my much earlier episodes, I'd mentioned this. Some people call it a conspiracy theory, but it makes sense. I don't know whether you'd call it a conspiracy theory, good business sense, or just logic. That I think conspiracy theory is if somebody deliberately planned something to happen to profit off it. But these private equity firms had seen the amount of junk food being produced. They've also seen the amount of medication being sold to counteract the effects of this junk food. So it's in their interest, and it is a perfectly valid business interest, that if you want two bites of the cherry, so you invest heavily in firms producing ultra-processed food, which makes people ill, and you then also invest in the pharmaceutical companies that sell the drugs to mask the symptoms of this illness. They don't want to cure people, because if you're cured, like I said earlier in this episode, they're not selling more drugs. They need people to be sick to sell them the drugs. And when I was looking at some of these studies, it's incredibly hard with some of them to find who actually funds the study. And if people are hiding who funds a study, it always sets up, it waves a massive red flag, doesn't it? Like I say, referring back to the study funded by the sugar industry that said sugar's good and fat's bad. Well, we know now that's complete bullhonk, it's a 100% hogwash. So there is this link, and we know that these, the food industry, the pharmaceutical industry, they spend millions on lobbying politicians, and a lot of these politicians that work for things like the Federal Drug Administration, the US Department of Health, that are promoting these studies. I mean, the USDH, they released a study saying you could live on, it was in excess of 90% ultra-processed foods and have there would be, I'm trying, what is it with me tonight? Let's look at this bloody camera, and it's so getting into my head. You could eat a very healthy diet, eating in excess of 90% ultra-processed foods. We are not designed to eat ultra-processed foods. I mean, Sean Baker said we were opportunistic omnivores. We know we're omnivores, we can eat most things. But if you look back to when we were first around, we would have eaten majority meat and fish that we could hunt for and catch. We wouldn't have been digging for roots and vegetables. We wouldn't have thought to do that. We'd have had plant material when it was available. So you think through autumn season we'd have had all these fruits and berries available, but we would have only eaten what was locally available to us. Christ, you've only got to go back 50 years. You wouldn't see bananas in the shops all year round, or if you did, they'd be prohibitively expensive. Where I live in the Midlands, you wouldn't have had access to, oranges, peaches, bananas, pineapples, all these exotic fruits. You'd have had access to what was local to you at an appropriate time. So you'd have had your fruits and your berries through the autumn. Rest of the year, there's nothing growing to eat in winter. You'd have been eating meat. So I whether it's confirmation bias from me, but I'm inclined to agree with them that we would have been opportunistic omnivores. Eyes on front of head. We were designed to hunt. We were designed to eat meat. And I think that would have been the biggest bulk of our diet. But we'd have also been designed for feast and famine. And something I was trying while I was doing the carnivore diet was intermittent fasting, where I was eating in an 8-hour window between midday and 8 p.m. And I thought I'd find it really difficult because, as I've said before, I am a classic grazer. Particularly if I'm late going to bed, I'll just sit there and get peckish and start grazing. Now, while I was doing the carnivore diet, for my breakfast, I'd have 2 rashers of bacon and 4 scrambled eggs. And I would cook the bacon in 10 grams of butter, fry the bacon in 10 grams of butter, and into the scrambled eggs I was just cooking in the microwave. I'd put 4 eggs, 20 ml of milk, 10 gram of butter in there, good twist of pink Himalayan salt. Actually, I think that camera might be a little bit high because I'm sitting here doing all kinds of gesticulation. I'm miming doing the salt meal. Bear with me while I have some more coffee. Right, and I'm presuming it is the fat in the bacon and the fat in the butter I was so satiated so quickly. I mean, the first time I had the scrambled eggs, I could only eat half of it. So I'd eaten like 2 rashers of bacon and 2 scrambled eggs. This was having had nothing from 8 o'clock the night before. This was just gone 12 o'clock. I could only eat half of it. I felt full. And I had to leave it a good hour and a half, 2 hours before I could eat the other half of the scrambled eggs. And this was an absolute revelation for me. Because previously I'd have done it with no butter and no eggs. Sorry, no butter and no eggs. No butter and no milk in the scrambled eggs. And just 1 spray or a teaspoon of olive oil to cook the bacon in. Or dry fried it in the pan. So the only thing I can put it down to is the fat in the butter really satiating me. And this is what I had for my breakfast. I'd have that 6 days out of 7. The 7th day, if I was meeting Carl down at the pub for breakfast, all you can eat buffet, I'd have 6 rashers of bacon and 6 fried eggs. I mean, yeah, that's a lot of calories. But I'd have that 8:30, 9 o'clock. And that would keep me full until I had my dinner in the evening. And there were a couple of occasions I was using MyFitnessPal to track my nutrients and calories. And there were a couple of days it was warning me I was dangerously under eating. The one day I only had 800 calories. And that was because I just didn't feel hungry. I was satiated all day. I was having black coffee, which apparently helps to suppress your appetite. I mean, folks going really strict carnivore won't drink coffee. I'd switch to having it without sugar. I used to have my coffee with either honey or brown sugar, soft dark brown sugar. I'd switch to having it without sugar. A little harder to drink without the sugar because I've got a really sweet tooth. So week 1, I allowed myself to have one orange in the evening. I mean, it was, something like 20 grams of carbs. And with carnivore, those doing strict carnivore will go 0 carb, minimal. I was trying to keep below 50 grams a day, and I did on all but 2 days, I think. I was allowing myself to have an orange in the evening and still coming in at under 30 grams of carbs a day, so I was happy at that. I had the orange because I was still struggling with the fact that you can get everything you need out of the meat. I mean, particularly, like, say, eating ruminant meat. I always used to joke that if I want to eat greens, I'll eat the animal that eats the greens. Turns out it's bloody right, because they have these 3 and 4 chambered stomachs. They can take all the nutrients out of everything they eat and pass them on to us, which for me is like, this is amazing. I thought stew was good with, beef flavoured carrots, but when you're getting all your greens through your meat, keep it going, fellas, keep it going. I love it. Where was I? You know what? Look at this. I've completely lost track again. Good God. I've been talking for nearly 45 minutes and not actually said anything. Nothing new there, is there? I reckon that's why the subscriber rate on YouTube's so low. I've got bugger all to say. Where was it? Yeah, like I say, the one day I'd had just 800 calories, another day 1100. The best nutrition I did was with skinless chicken thighs. I'd eaten only 1,300 calories in a day and got 189 grams of protein in. I remember, was it the Dots or the Bow Hunters last year, talking to Andy, and I said I was aiming back then for 140 gram of protein a day. He said, Christ, Rich, eating that much protein is going to give you cancer. And this was one of the common misconceptions, and still is, that eating red meat gives colon cancer. Well, again, it was epidemiological studies that merely said to people, do you eat red meat? Yes or no. Have you had cancer? Yes or no. And if those that had eaten red meat had cancer, they said, there you go, red meat causes cancer. They didn't ask them what kind of red meat they were eating. You know, are they having are they having Wimpy every day, McDonald's every day, Doner Kebab every day? They weren't looking at the source and quality of what they were eating. That's like saying, oh, let's think of something stupid. You know what? For once, I can't think of something stupid. It'd be like me saying that going and asking somebody, do you smoke? Yes. Have you seen any elephants in West Bromwich? No. Therefore, smoking keeps elephants out of West Bromwich. You know, it's that kind of bullshit. But I mean, what I discovered I did Carnivore for a month, and I noticed within a week I was looking slimmer. Now, I didn't weigh myself. I knew from the fit of my clothes I wasn't slimmer, but I looked it. And I can only think this is part of this anti-inflammatory thing that's reported very strongly with the carnivore diet. One thing I found when I was looking at it is apparently for every gram of carbohydrate that's in your body, 3 grams of water attaches to it. So you think I'm eating next to no carbs. I haven't got all that extra bloat from water. Yes, I know we need water to survive. I know how important it is. Christ, I did an entire episode on it. I called it the elixir of life. But if this is attaching to the carbohydrates, it's going to give you that plumper look. There were a couple of days, like I said, that I exceeded the 50 grams of carbs, but that was me just trying something because I'd noticed this. I mean, particularly around my face and under here. Yeah, I know I've still got multiple chins, but what doesn't help is I have a very short neck as well, which really doesn't help the formation of the double chin. You know, I'm almost jaw onto shoulders, you know. Call me Billy No Neck. But a couple of days I did try introducing more carbohydrates into my diet, just see if I could notice a difference the following day, because I noticed a difference in how I was feeling. Like I say, within a week, it was maybe 3 or 4 days, I'd noticed I wasn't getting tired in the afternoon. You know, I didn't need a nap at 4 o'clock. I was sleeping better, and my mood felt really good. I mean, I'd read that it took, you know, only between 2 and 4 weeks you start noticing any difference. Maybe it's because I had been eating so shittily that suddenly going to something much healthier. And I didn't say whole foods, but you have to be really, really careful. My daughter had bought some sliced chicken breast, not the mechanically reclaimed shit that looks like pressed mush. You looked at it and it was actual sliced breast, and I was curious as to how much water, because we all know how it was in it, because we all know you buy meat from the supermarket and it's injected full of water. So I thought, right, let's have a look at the ingredients, expecting to see chicken breast, water, you know, give you a percentage of water. There is a list of ingredients longer than the fucking wedding guest list at a royal wedding, including things like malted dextrose, salt, flavourings. I think there's something like 11 ingredients in what's supposed to be just plain roast chicken breast. So, you know, it still pays to read the ingredient labels unless you're fortunate enough to be able to source wild game, things like that, you know, that's had nothing added, no preservatives, no nothing. It still pays to read the ingredient labels. Like I say, I was tracking calories on MyFitnessPal and the nutrients in there. Like I said, this is where I really figured out you can't just eat as much as you want. I bought some pork belly slices. Fuck me, two 2 decent pork belly slices was my total daily calorific allowance. So, like I said, you can't eat as much as you want. You still got to run that deficit if you want to lose weight. My primary reason for this was seeing looking for the anti-inflammatory effects, and they seem in my case at least. Remember, I'm not an expert. I'm just Joe Schmo finding out what he wants to do as he goes along and trying not to get too much confirmation bias in there. But I noticed a massive lift in my mood, less bloating, more energy, sleeping better, and not getting that afternoon crash, 4 o'clock. I mean, come on, I'm 53. It's traditional to have an afternoon nap, isn't it? Unless you're Spanish, when it's traditional to get pissed at 2 o'clock every day and for everybody to have a nap. But that's an entirely different story. Bear with me. I'm just going to have a drag of me vape. I'm going to mute this, of course this is loud. I know when I've recorded with Anthony and Dougie, you can hear Dougie's vape a mile off. Bear with me, folks. There we go. Smoke effects. Oh, I've gone on to a bigger vape. I treated myself to that for my birthday, a Vupu Drag X Pro. It is very nice. Let me just flick it back off. Pop it down there. Yeah, I say a couple of days. Because I've noticed these differences, I decided to add some carbs in for a day and see if I noticed a difference. I'd add them in, and the following day, the first time I tried it, I wasn't sure whether it was purely coincidence, but I felt stodgy, I felt bloated. I could tell something was different. Something was very obviously different. Didn't know whether that was just pure coincidence the first time I tried it. So I tried it again a second day, and I got the same results the day after. You hear people reporting it's generally accepted that you're going to either get the carnivore squits or the carnivore clogs. And most people that get a change in bowel movement report it around day 7 to 10. Day 2. And I can't see how it happened so quickly. I still can't figure it out. But the only day there was any adverse effect was day 2. And I could shit through the eye of a needle. I was shitting liquid. Excuse that if that's too much information. Day 3, perfectly fine. And I actually found better. I'll try and be polite for once. I mean, there's a first time for everything in there. Much better and more regular bowel movements on carnivore. Now, I've come off it for a few weeks, couple of 3 weeks, to see what happens. Not eating crap, but adding carbs in again. And it's back to how I was before I tried it. I'm feeling stodgier, more bloated. I'm starting to get afternoon crashes. That tiredness in the afternoon. That's reappearing, and generally my mood isn't as good. So I shall be going back on it. I mean, I had a message from a listener saying, just listen to episode 63. How you getting on with carnivore? And I said, I've come off it for a little bit. I said, I had really fantastic results on it. And really noticing a downward turn off it. Like I say, I've still got this nagging thing in my mind that I think it's just because we've had drilled in for us for so many years. You need your fruit, you need your vegetables, you need this, you need your fibre. There's still that nagging doubt there, but the results I've seen are remarkable for me. Anyway, so explaining this, and listener said, right, I'm on day 16 of strict carnivore, eating only beef and salt and drinking water. Basically, full-blown lion diet. And he said, I'm feeling absolutely amazing. From what he said, I think he'd been carnivore-ish up to that, then made this commitment. And he was saying he's getting through about 30 kilos of beef a month. He did give me a link to a company where it's grass-fed beef, really, really good beef. At the moment with family here, I couldn't afford to spend the amount of money for 30 kilos of prime grass-fed beef. Like I say, it does look to work out cheaper than standard supermarket stuff, but beef isn't cheap. But then again, I suppose you say, what price your health? I want to live till I'm at least 130. I'd still want to be shooting bows at 130 years old. So what price your health and longevity? We'll see. I'm fortunate enough to be in a group where you can get hold of game at really good prices, but the downside of venison is it tends to be very, very lean. You need to add fat to it. Whereas, having had a look at the meat this company sells, I'll drop a link in the show notes so you can have a look for yourself. It looks... But then again, they're not going to put photos of shitty meat on the website, are they? But listener said it's amazing beef, really, really good, and he's feeling absolutely fantastic after 16 days of lion diet. It's looking more and more appealing. I mean, I'm thinking if I can get hold of some deer carcass, would it be worth it then purchasing a wild boar and trimming some of the fat off that to add into the venison? I mean, I know folks that make their own sausages and their own venison burgers tend to do that anyway because, like I said, because venison is so very lean. But, with harvested wild venison, it's got... You buy the carcass, you skin it, you skin it and process it yourself. This stuff's been running wild, running free. It's had no artificial food put in it. It's had no antibiotics, none of that crap. And it's died with a rifle bullet. It hasn't had to stand in a line watching all its mates getting slaughtered. So there's not that build-up of adrenaline in its system to taint the meat. It's free-range, organic meat at its finest. But having said that, this grass-fed beef, like I say, looks amazing. I'll drop the link to the company in the show notes. I'll grab it off the message. So I am going to go back on carnivore when finances allow. I'd love to try lion diet. I think that'll be tougher because it's more restrictive. I mean, you'd have to... Well, I haven't looked in this country if it's available, but I mean, you can certainly cook in lard. I don't know if the listener cooks in lard or not, or whether just in the tallow rendered out from the beef. But we'll see. Like I say, it's something I'd like to try at some point, the lion diet. How long have I been going? Oh, almost an hour. Right, before I go, I've got to say, get well soon to Andy Williams. Poor bugger, his shoulder had been knackered, had his shoulder done, and just as he's had that done, poor bugger broke his foot. Coming out of Copey's front door. He took so much stick on Facebook over that. Andy, I really do hope you get him better. In fact, while I'm talking about Andy, the new EFAA magazine, The Field Archer, this latest edition, best one I've seen yet, really readable. Couple of really nice articles from Andy, one on the problems he's been having with his shoulders and his treatment, and another on warm-up and rehabilitation exercises. So rehabilitation exercises from his shoulder. There was a really nice article in there about a new field art EFA club that's been set up in the Peak District. And there was another article, if I remember right, I think it was gap shooting. A really, really nice variety of articles in there. And I sat and binge read it and really enjoyed it. Like I say, this current edition of the Field Archer, the best episode yet. So I'd like to say thank you to all of those that contributed to that. Really, really nice read. Like I say, I sat down and ended up just binge reading it. It was really good fun. Anyway, what's coming up in future episodes? I'm going to be playing with some wooden arrows. Came about as a result of a conversation with Rob Jones from Off the Arrow Shelf. Hang on a minute, see if I can reach this. I got a new toy to play with. Actually, I've got to say a massive thank you to Rob for helping me find a consistent anchor point with my trad bow. Regular listeners know I've got a Mandarin Duck Black Hunter. It's a lovely bow, but I shoot about once a year. And Rob mentioned, it was in, what episode was it? It's all right, I can't even pull it up on my phone. Not this current episode, the episode before the Off the Arrow Shelf podcast. Mentioning atmospheric conditions on arrows, and he was talking about bow speed, and I actually disagreed with what he said. Phoned him up, had a conversation with him, took the Black Hunter over to Rob's and tried some of Rob's wooden arrows, because I was umming and ahhing about building some just to try out a couple of things. And I've never been able to find a consistent anchor point with my Black Hunter. 5 minutes with Rob, and he's got me a consistent anchor point. I mean, I was only shooting at 5 or 6 yards, and normally for me, I'm lucky if I can put arrows out my trad bow in a 12-inch group. I'm using Rob's arrows, and like I say, 5 minutes with him, and he's got me literally smacking shaft against shaft at 5 yards. I was so impressed, and I've got to say a massive thank you to him, not only for the coaching to help me find a consistent, repeatable anchor point, but we were having this discussion about woodies, and I'd mentioned about wanting to boat tail them. I would say taper, but again, with woodies, you taper for a knock and taper for a point, unless you're using parallel points, of course. But I've been watching some of Roger Massey's videos, and knowing that Cy Thomas loves, he used to, when I say taper, boat tail, back of the shaft, narrow it down by, I think it's a 32nd or a 16th, you bring it down. Anyway, I was talking to Rob about wanting to try this, because in my completely ignorant, uneducated mind about woodies seem to have very low FOC. I mean, I know the experts say 7 to 11% for good 3D arrows, but this is the experts, the guys that can shoot perfect shots every time. And I was wondering, for an average archer, would that higher FOC make it more forgiving? I found it with my 3 carbon 3D arrows that it's made it more forgiving. And you look at a lot of the woodies, they're 9 or 10 grains per pound running an 80 grain point, which is so light. And I'd mentioned to Rob about, I was curious, because I've got some shafts here, as to whether boat tailing them, just tapering down the back 10 inches at 32nd or 16th, increasing that FOC would make them more forgiving. And Rob said, well, you can borrow me a jig. I said, you got a tapering jig? Right, now I'm going to have to look at the camera here so you can see this. This This is an absolute beast of a tapering jig. I know Simon's got one that's much smaller, but this, hang on. If you're on the audio podcast, this is an excuse to get over to YouTube and have a look. That is an absolute beast of a tapering jig. I'm just going to put it back down now. And I bet I've set it up best part of 20 times now to taper shafts. You know, just put the front of the shaft in the drill and run it down there. Of course, it's got sandpaper down the middle, but it's adjustable for different sizes of arrows. It's an awesome, awesome jig. And thank you so much for lending that to me, Rob. I 20 times now, and I spoke to Rob the other day, I said about set up a dozen times. I've set up a load more, and I've clamped the shaft into the drill before I cut it, so any marring on the front will be cut off before the points go on. So, you know, the points are going onto good fresh virgin wood. But it's got to be 20 times now, and never had the nerve to actually pull the trigger on the drill. Rob said when he first had it, it took him a few attempts to pull that trigger. So I think next episode I'll do once I've had a play with those and let you know how I get on with that. Really looking forward to try that, but so nervous about just squeezing that trigger on that drill. One more thing before we go. I went down to Whitemark at the end of, was it end of March or start of this month? A couple of weeks ago anyway, for the, hang on, what? I think it might have been, hang on, 24th of March. 24th of March I went down to Whitemark to shoot the memorial shoot, which it was a marked precision, marked 3D precision round, and it was my very first EFAA classification shoot, because the champs aren't classification shoots. I'd never shot a classification shoot before. Shooting adult male freestyle unlimited as usual. I learnt a lot. I mean, I came away with a personal best. I found, and this was why I changed up my practice regime a while back, obviously didn't do it for long enough. I was getting some really good first arrows and then being let down by the second arrow. I mean, my first target was a dream start. First arrow right in the middle of the pro ring. Second arrow, took the fletching off the first arrow, it was so close to it, and actually punched it inside the 3D. You know, so I started off with a perfect score on the first target. When I shot good shots, I did well. I'd say, I mean, my personal best is still embarrassingly low. It was 458. You know, I'm so desperate to crack this 500, but I'm just not shooting it enough. And its second shots are consistently let me down. I had a conversation with Mark Service the other day. He said he's going through having a bad patch in his shooting. I mean, Mark's an incredibly capable shooter. He won his class at the EFAA Indoor Nationals. He's a really, really good shooter. And he said he's going through he's having a rough patch where he missed 2 targets shooting at Reeking Foresters, and I think that was the paper faces he was shooting, you know, the roundels. And I said, well, I had the same at Whitemark. I had 3 really bad shots where I think I put too much pressure in the heel of my grip, heeled the bow as the shot broke, and the second arrow clipped the top of the 3D and off into the boss. You know, which is fucking embarrassing when you're shooting AMFU. And I said a few weeks back I was practicing at Paget's. When there's nobody else around, you can get a 60-yard shot on the 3D standing bear when we had the 3D standing bear up. and I was trying 4-arrow groups at 60 yards. I'd have a really good group where I'd put all 4 arrows in a 2 to 3 inch group. Then the next end, it'd be an 18 inch to 2 foot group. Mark said, you know what, that's exactly like I'm shooting at the moment. And I said, I don't think EFAA is helping me with it. You shoot your first arrow, and if you score, that's it. You know, I said, it's the second, third and fourth arrows that are giving me problems. And he said, yeah, it's EFAA brain, hit it and forget it, you know, which I'd love shooting EFAA, I really do. But again, I've said so many times, it's consistency. Blank bailing, I've started doing blank bailing purely because I want to work on the muscle memory and the shot execution. And in theory, with blank bailing, you've got no spot to aim at. You know, you're just shooting into the bail. Dickhead here. I can find little imperfections on the boss to aim at, can't I? So the blank bailing suddenly doesn't become blank bailing. I'm looking at spots to aim at, which is doing me no bloody good at all. I came away from Whitemark having won the AMFU class, and I think everybody just had one of those days shooting. I was just fortunate that I had the least unfortunate day shooting. I had fewer bad shots. We were missing the likes of Andy. Of course, he'd broken his foot. Poor old Davy G. He'd got flare-ups in all his joints again, so he shouldn't shoot. Copey was shooting. I think it was Rednecks he was at that weekend. You know, I wouldn't have stood a chance if those guys had been there. But I was just pleased I shot a PB. Like I said, an embarrassingly low PB, but it was still an improvement on the other scores I'd shot. I think I'm going to have to do a lot more precision rounds, or maybe even East Midlands rounds at Paget, where you shoot one from each of the pegs. You shoot 3 arrows at every target, just to get that consistency up. Like I say, blank bailing, what I was trying to do with it, I didn't, because I'd end up picking spots on the bloody on the boss to aim at, which defeats the whole object of blank bailing. I did at one point, I was at 3 yards, so I'd come up, anchor, aim at the boss, just point bow at boss, then close my eyes, you know, I'm so close I can't miss the boss, and then just try and feel the shot. That seemed to be quite good. I mean, down at Whitemark, like I say, good shots led to good scores. There was, I think, it was the Cougar target. And come on, who doesn't like slipping the shaft in a Cougar on a Sunday afternoon, eh? But got a nice first arrow in it. Second arrow, I started to wobble. And Brain says, come on, Rich, don't punch it. Let down. So I decide to let down. Brain says, yep, we're letting down. I start to let down, and as I start to let down, Brain says, we're letting down. Trigger finger says, no, you're not, you motherfucking pussy, and bitch slapped that trigger in the middle of next week. I was lucky I didn't miss. It ended up right in the Cougar's ass. You know, there's another joke about slipping your shaft in a cougar, banging your shaft in a Cougar's ass. But, like I say, Brain was saying let down, arm was letting down. Trigger says, no way, mofo, here we go. So it's, again, the uncontrolled shots that are costing me the points and costing me accuracy. So that's something I really have got to work on. Anyway, I think I've detained you good folks for long enough. Oh, while I think about it, T-shirt tonight by St. Joe River Bows. Joy had her second St. Joe River Bow land, and Tracy incredibly generously sent her a couple of T-shirts as well. And I managed to blag one off Joy, so Tracy, love your bows, love your T-shirts, thank you very much. Right, I think that's about it for this episode, folks. Remember, share the link, share the love, subscribe to YouTube. Let's see if I can get myself up to 50 subscribers. I am going to be through the 10,000 downloads on the podcast, on the audio streams very, very shortly. I have to say thank you very much to each and every person that takes the time to listen. Love it when folks get in touch with me. You know the routine. archerygeekoutdoors@gmail.com. Right, I'm going to have a look now, see if I can point it out on the screen. I'm going to have my finger wobbling around everywhere. I'm looking at the computer as I'm trying to... Where am I? There we go. There's the email address, folks, and I just turned my head away from the mic, which is bloody awful. There's the email address. There's the Twitter handle. And there's the Sweary Archer. Right, yeah, archerygeekoutdoors@gmail.com, Twitter @A_G_outdoors, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. Just Google Archery Geek Outdoors. You'll know where to find me, won't you? Right, let me get this thing ready. We're almost ready. Folks, thank you so much for taking the time to listen. See you on the next episode. Remember, stay safe, shoot straight. Good night.